Hi, welcome to my lecture on the semi-Slav, which starts by d4, d5, c4, e6. So this is semi-Slav is actually a variation of the Queen's Gambit declined. Knight c3, knight f6, sort of the normal moves. Looks like a normal Queen's Gambit declined, but now white plays knight f3 instead of the typical bishop to g5, and then black will play c6. And this is the semi-Slav is sort of a hybrid between a Queen's Gambit decline and the Slav defense. And from this position, this is the position. You can reach this position by transposition of moves, meaning you can reach this same position by a different move order. But if you've reached this position, you're technically right now in a semi-Slav, even though it may go back to a Queen's Gambit declined or even a Slav. So the two main moves, though, for white are e3, which is called the Moran, and bishop to g5, which is called the anti-Moran. Let me cover the Moran first. So if white plays e3, we're in the Moran. The drawbacks of this move is we've now shut in this bishop. It can't really move out, but we've freed this bishop. And the idea with the Moran is that white is going to get more central control, but black is going to make white waste some time recapturing this pawn, meaning black's going to capture, which will force white to recapture with the bishop. So here's a normal continuation. A knight on b to d7. So black develops the knight here with the idea of supporting a pawn advance to e5 or c5. White will play bishop to d3. Like I said in my Queen's Gambit decline, the king is probably going to castle kingside, and now this bishop eyes to the king side. But now black will capture the c-pawn, making white waste time recapturing. So bishop retakes the pawn. Black will play b5, making the bishop move once again. And this pawn move also does a couple other things. Could allow black to play the bishop to here. Now black can move the pawn to b4, making the knight move, and also gains space on the queen side. So now white moves back, and black will play a6, supporting b5. The idea is that black wants to play c5. Whoops. But if it did right away, without playing a6, this pawn right here would be hanging, and this bishop here could just recapture. Now white plays e4. One of the goals for white in the opening is to get an e4 for central control. It also frees this bishop, so it can come out. And then black will play c5, hitting black and now attacking the center. So that is a typical continuation of the Moran. Let me back up and cover the anti-Moran briefly. So instead of playing c3, now black will play bishop to g5. What is white is saying is, I don't want to trap in my bishop. And it will instead pin this knight right here. So there's a couple possible continuations from here. Black can play knight on b to d7, which is actually, we've now transposed into a Queen's Gambit declined, which is called the Cambridge Springs defense. And the typical, just a few moves, the typical continuation is e3, helping to support d4 and freeing this bishop here on f1. Black will now play queen to a5 though. And what's happening is that white has moved its dark squared bishop over to this side, to the king side of the board. It's played a3, and now this bishop here can't really help defend the queen side. So black has now moved its queen over here, pinned this knight, and sort of attacking on the queen side, and this bishop over here cannot really help defend. So that's a strategy there, but it's a transposition into a Queen's Gambit decline game. So let me back up. Oops. Yeah. Another common move is h6, which is actually called the Moscow variation. Here, black is going to force the exchange of this bishop for this knight. So what will happen is that black will get the bishop pair, but white's going to get a lead in development. And here are just some typical continuation moves. So black will take the knight, queen retakes, e3 to support d4 and to free the bishop on f1. Knight on b to d7 for the same reasons I've mentioned before. White will play bishop to d3 for the same reasons I mentioned before. Now black will engage in the typical time-wasting maneuver. If pawn takes d4, now white has to play bishop takes c4. If I said d4 before, I meant black plays d takes c4, bishop takes c4, and I'll end the variation there. So let's back up to the last variation of the anti-Moran. Instead of playing h6, black could play d takes c4. What's going to happen here is that in the end, white's going to end up a pawn, except for black's going to have a lead in development. So now white plays e4, very threatening, moving the pawn up. It looks like this knight is pinned. White can win the knight, but it really can't. Black will play b5. Now black has sort of really won a pawn over here. White plays e5. Looks like the knight's a goner, but black will play h6, saying, well, if you take my knight, I'm going to take your bishop. White just backs up. Now black plays g5. So it looks like, the bishop has to move, and then the knight can just move. But now white's going to do some tactical stuff. Takes. Black recaptures. The bishop takes. So technically, whoops. White has given the knight up for 2 pawns, but this knight here is still pinned, so white's going to win it. So knight on b to d7, and he takes f6. So basically we've had knight exchanged off. Black won a pawn over here, but white won 2 pawns over here. So white is up actually a pawn. So knight on b to d7. A developing move which sort of threatens to win this pawn here, but not really. Oh, whoops. I must have missed. Oh, we took. I'm sorry. We got the move order a little wrong. E takes f6. Bishop to g7. Sort of developing the bishop, getting it online here. And I am running out of time for this lecture, so I'm actually going to have to end it here. But those from the anti-Moran, those are the 3